Hi, everyone. My name is Martin Willemink. I am co-founder and CEO at SegMed, and welcome to a new Bytes of Innovation webinar. Bytes of Innovation is a deep dive into the future of medicine, and we do this with renowned experts such as researchers, physicians, investors, and lawyers. Usually we have one every other Thursday. Now, just before summer, it's a little different. We have one today. Next week, we have a webinar, and then we have the summer break. And after the summer break, we will continue with a new series of webinars starting in September. The concept is 15 minutes of presentation by the expert, followed by 10 minutes of Q&A, which is moderated by Aline, who is the Senior Medical Director at SegMed, and by me. So all participants, make sure to put your questions in the chat so that we can discuss them during the Q&A phase of this webinar. Today, I am proud to announce that we have Moatti amongst us. So SC holds a master's in in electrical engineering, and she holds an MBA from Stanford. She founded a successful mobile social services startup. She worked at Nokia Labs and at Facebook, and she founded Products That Count, a product acceleration platform. And in 2017, she founded Moatti Capital, an early growth Silicon Valley VC firm. And in addition to all of that, she is also a lecturer at Stanford and at Columbia University. And today, SC is going to talk about making strides in data-driven wellness, and she's going to focus on how to make good products. SC, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you for this kind introduction. It's great to be here. We're very proud investors in SegMed. Very, very bullish on what the company offers, primarily for some of the things that I'm going to be sharing today, which is that, we are in what we call the age of product, which is a time where every single industry is becoming digital. And our goal at Moatti Capital is to accelerate that transformation across all industries with investments like SegMed and their incredible team. So let me share my screen. I assume you can see it.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, we can see it.
Fantastic. All right. So way of introduction, Martin already covered, so that will be very brief. Like he said, I spent a decade building products and companies. Had my own company for some time, and then worked for Nokia, Facebook, and other great innovators. And have been investing for about a decade. Really, what we bring to our portfolio companies is access to this very large platform, Products That Count. That is a global network that reaches over 300,000 product managers. And a very large portion of them are in life sciences, as you'll see in a minute. The transition between my career as an entrepreneur and as an investor was really writing a book on what makes a great product. The book's actually right here. You can see it here, where I talked about like what makes a great product. And I'll share some of my takeaways from interviewing hundreds of product leaders, and obviously from my own experience a little bit today. The Products That Count organization, to give you a sense in case you are building products yourself and want to learn or share some of your best practices. We have about a dozen different kinds of programs. Weekly programs like a very popular newsletter, a podcast that has won a Webby Honorary Award, and a bunch of other things that run weekly. Then we have monthly programs that are by invitation, mastermind circles, in-depth ebooks, and things like that. And then every year we run product awards, which you can nominate any company, any product for these product awards, celebrating the best products for product managers. And we also have chief product officer awards celebrating some of the best chief product officers out there in the industry, cross industry. So Teladoc, for example, was one of the winners this year in life sciences. All of the programs are free in case you want to get involved, and the URL is productsthatcount.com. So one thing that we've seen over the past 2-3 years, really was accelerated since COVID, is that we're in an era where the best product, and when I say product, by the way, I mean digital product, the best product wins, which used to be very controversial. But today, for example, we're on Zoom, which is a service that, unlike its competitors like Google and Microsoft, doesn't have infinite distribution, is not free, but it has more than 50% market share. And the reason is it's a better product. And so as a result of that, we see that companies are moving towards the conviction that product is unlocking business value. If you look at, McKinsey, for example, there's a really solid research that shows that market leaders are 2 to 3 times more likely to involve product in their strategic decisions than challengers. And so as a result of that, a lot of large companies, Fortune 5,000 or 1,000, are elevating chief product officers to the C-suite. Today, 15% of these companies have a chief product officer, which is very similar to where chief marketing officers were 15 years ago. And today, about 70% of Fortune 5,000 have a chief marketing officer. We believe that we'll be there with product in 5 years. And the role that product plays in these organizations, the reason it's at the C-suite is that it's very strategic. It helps drive revenue, it helps reduce costs, it helps increase productivity. Segment plays in these, moving these KPIs at its own customers. What we've also seen is, we've done a lot of research on what makes a great product organization. And I want to double click a little bit on this. First of all, the challenges in product organizations across industry. Most of the time, product management being a new discipline, product managers are new to product management. In fact, 3 out of 4 product managers has 2 years of experience or less. And so you have basically, that gives you a sense for the very rapid growth of this function, but also for the fact that most product managers have very, very high imposter syndrome, feeling they don't know what they're doing because they're new to this role. So when you staff your product organization, you have to be aware of that fact. Also, once they have a little bit of experience, they very quickly get poached and highly paid by the FANGs, which is a source of frustration with a lot of product organization. And for good reasons, because the cost of ineffective product management is really high. It impacts obviously the top line, failed product launches, churn, and also it wastes a lot of engineering bandwidth. And then when we look at the top of that organization, whether it's the VP of product or the chief product officer, and look at what makes a great chief product officer, we see really 3 characteristics. And this is research we've done in collaboration with Capgemini over the past year. The first thing we see is that depending on the kind of organization you're in, a great chief product officer will focus on growth if they're digital native, or on alignment if they work at a large organization and are focusing on digital transformation. So it's sort of one or the other as like the North Star for success. But when it comes to a combination of hard and soft skills, then both are required. It's not good enough to hit numbers. You also, as a chief product officer, need considerable soft skills, influencing skills, stakeholder management, cross-functional management. And then the third kind of key trend we saw, which surprised even me, even building products that count over the years, is that the most successful product teams work like larger organizations. In other words, the more responsibility they have across product and design and UX and analytics and marketing, and half the time also engineering, the more successful they are, which is different from the trends we saw before COVID, where product was almost always an influencing function with very little reporting responsibilities. Okay, so kind of moving from the top to then how you build a great product culture, I want to go to this. We've also done quite a bit of research on what makes a great product culture. And there's three characteristics that come up. The first one is respect. Building great digital products is definitely a team game. And so understanding the different perspectives of different team members is a key component of successful cultures. We've seen a lot of teams use the Enneagram, which is that round symbol you see on the slide here, because it helps showcase that different personalities are influenced not just by who they are, but also by their environment, which is really important in product. That's not the end all be all, but that's been one of the trends we've seen with a lot of product organizations, successful ones. Then the second trend is grit. This idea that failure is not an option. And in fact, when we look across the board at product management cultures, it's really hard across industry, geography, stages of the product lifecycle to find common thread. But this one is a big one, which is having a growth mindset. And when you think about it, it's fairly simple. The role of product in larger organizations is to bring innovation inside the corporation. And so product managers need to constantly reinvent themselves and come up with new ways to do things, which is why they have this very strong growth mindset of seeing change as an evolution and a learning experience, as opposed to a series of successes and failures. And then lastly, adaptability. Building products at scale requires obviously a ton of processes. But again, because of that component of constant sort of creative destruction, you need to have a combination of what research will call tactical performance, which is the process orientation, and then adaptive performance, which is the ability to change. That's for great product cultures. And now if we have a few more minutes, I do want to talk about a few more tactical steps to really what makes a great product manager. And that is really first understanding what makes a great product. So there's this idea in Silicon Valley that people have that you have to find what's called product market fit, right? So there's an offering you build that's meeting the needs of some customers, and therefore here's the line in the sand, you have product market fit, and from there, all you have to do is grow. And I see Martin is smiling because that's couldn't be farther from the truth. Once you find some equilibrium, your customers are going to ask for new features, so you'll lose product market fit, you're going to make some of them unhappy, but you're going to gain new ones. And so you'll be constantly in search of product market fit. So, what I say is there's more like 50 shades of product market fit. And so if you don't have that idea as an entrepreneur of like, there's a clear line in the sand, then the North Star for finding product market fit or for building a great product rather is two things. One is what we call the product equation, which is really saying like, why are we doing what we're doing, right? Ultimately, success as a business is our ability to generate revenue. Revenue is, you know, volume times price. So volume being number of customers times number of transactions per customer times revenue per transaction. It's a very, very simple equation. You can see that the factors cancel themselves out. But if you're able to articulate as a product manager or as an entrepreneur how you're going to get more customers, you have an acquisition strategy, how you're going to engage them, get them to come back more often, you have an engagement strategy, and then how you're going to monetize, you obviously have a monetization strategy. And being able to articulate that with KPIs that are relevant to your product, to your industry, is really the recipe to, you know, to success, right? To driving revenue. It's not enough as a product manager, and this is especially true in the field of life sciences, because that will, you know, hitting numbers will make you a great project manager, but you also have to remember why you're building these products. And so one of the key, you know, arguments I make in my book is that technology being now an extension of ourselves, when we think about what makes a great product, we have to think about what makes a great person. And so I use the mind, body, spirit framework to describe that. So I'll start from the bottom. The body rule is, you know, all about beauty. We all want to look good. We therefore expect that our technology will operate by beauty. And that doesn't mean pretty pictures. It means, you know, efficiency. It means some form of a wow factor. The second rule being the spirit rule. We all want to have meaningful lives. We all want very personalized products, but with personalization also comes, you know, the necessity to respect privacy, and there's different risks to address there that I'm happy to get into. And then finally, the mind rule. We all want to be learning and growing. That's why you're listening here to this webinar. And we also expect that our technology is going to be evolving and learning, and there are different ways that people learn. Some are very incremental, some are a lot more disruptive. So why I think this, you know, particularly applies to the field of life sciences now is because a lot of these products are built on top of large amounts of data, like data lakes, right? So over the past 15 years, we've gone through the mobile revolution. The iPhone just celebrated, I think it's 15th anniversary just this year. And mobile is collecting data about, you know, location and basically everything that's outside of us. But life science is collecting data about everything that's inside of us. There's much more data inside of us than there is outside. But the principle for building great products are exactly the same. You're just applying it to a different data set. And so where, you know, that intersection between these technologies that were honed and developed in the mobile era is intersecting with life sciences, right? Where life science meets data science is where we see a lot of opportunity, particularly because, you know, that mobile mindset or the data science mindset is a very, I say a very impatient mindset. Like things have to be done very quickly. It's all about speed. But in the field of life sciences, it's sort of the opposite. There's a lot of regulation, there's long sales and testing cycles. So you have basically a lot of impatient people, meaning a lot of very patient people. And that's where, you know, I think there's a lot of great opportunities for innovation. That's what I wanted to share today. happy to stop this screen share and go back to a little bit of Q&A if we have time for it.
Thank you, Essie. Thank you very much for sharing all your knowledge in the field. So now we are opening for the Q&A session. So I see there is already some questions in the chat. So the first one from Michelle, what are some best practices for engineering teams and product teams to work together for the business to succeed?
Yeah, so, it's really interesting because if you ask that question, and the field of product is evolving so fast, right? If you asked that question 2-3 years ago, it was all about how can a product manager influence an engineer. And I remember this cartoon saying, like, there's a product manager and an engineer. Are you guys friends? Product managers immediately, yes. Engineer, not at all. and that just gives you a sense of like the power relationship between the two organizations. What we're seeing now is, as of like 2022, when we look at the best product organization, engineering actually reports into them more than half of the cases, which really simplifies, some of the influencing that used to be so hard before. When you think about like what makes sense on a long-term basis, that's really the structure that makes the most sense, because you look at, a building, the architect, i.e. the product manager, is the one building or designing the building, and then the contractor builds it according to specs, not the other way around. And so we're really seeing a shift towards what, we believe is the long-term organization, where engineering is reporting and following the lead of product organizations.
I see. And then there's another question from Garth. He asks if a good PM can make a bad product good.
Yeah. There's one more thing on the previous question that I want to add. One of the very significant trends we see that helps with that, shifting balance and dynamic is the emergence of low code and no code solutions. And let me explain why. It used to be that to do anything, you had to, basically ask engineering to build it. And then there was a huge shortage of engineering resources. So your really smart entrepreneurs came and said, why don't we get rid of that inefficiency and instead create a lot of solutions that product managers can take off the shelves and use to basically supplement engineering organizations. So one of the ways that, a lot of product managers rebalance engineering organizations is by leveraging these low code and no code solutions. And then can a good product manager make a bad product good? It's really interesting because you have to ask, like, what makes a great product? And we talked a little bit about the kind of the guiding principles. And if a product is, hitting revenue goal and delighting customers, then, that is a great product. So, of course, a product manager can always transform a quote unquote bad product, i.e. a product that doesn't generate revenue nor delight customers, into a good one. The question is it worth it, right? And so one of the frameworks that you can look at is a framework that's very inspired by the Boston Consulting Group matrix of looking at what's the market share of a given product, and then what's the growth in market share of a product. So a product that is a bad product would be a product that is not generating revenue. Otherwise, that's kind of half of the equation. So if it's not generating revenue, but it has a lot of growth potential, then it's what we call a question mark, right, in that quadrant. And so to turn that question mark into a product that has market share, you want to run a lot of small experimentation to see if it's worth it to make that transformation. So that would be like, you know, where as a product manager, you would want to focus your effort. If the growth in market share, right, is not there, so you're kind of in the 0-0, then you have what's called a dog, and you never really want to be maintaining one of these types of product. And so your approach would be to shut it down to be a great product manager. So that's how I would think about it.
That's great. I see a lot of what you were saying at SegMed right now. So we are doing a lot of testing as well. So I think that Dan, who is the senior project manager at SegMed, has one question. Do you like to make it yourself, Dan?
Yeah. So
Hi,
it'd be really, hey, it's great to meet you. It'd be really interesting to hear like how you think about you mentioned product market fit and how you're always kind of iterating to keep product market fit, which obviously completely makes sense. And I think, yeah, everyone would probably agree with. It'd be really interesting to hear kind of your thoughts on finding like initial product market fit. And you mentioned kind of myths, and we've been talking about it a lot here. And if you're looking at both kind of the product and the market, I don't know, it'd be interesting, yeah, like what you think. Because I think, you know, like Mark Andreessen's always like, if you have a team, a product, and a market, the market always wins. And then like product market fit, like Ben Horowitz is like, it's hard to kind of define, but it's easier to define when you don't have it rather than when you do. And so we're kind of looking at different markets and different products. And I know your equation had like number of customers as kind of like the first variable, which I think is similar to a market. And yeah, so I guess not a super clear question, but it'd be interesting if you think more about the market or like the Zoom example of a product, or how you kind of like massage those to find initial product market fit.
Yeah. So, you know, what I think is product market fit is completely a myth. It's actually very misleading. Like, oh, where's product market fit? You can spin your wheel on this. The key to great products are, number one, does it make money, right? Because that's the goal of any corporation. So if you want your role to be strategic, you want to be contributing to top line KPIs. And then number two, that's not quite enough, because you also need to delight customers, i.e. have, you know, references, have a great, you know, net promoter score, customer sat, and stuff like that. So the first step is my product making money? And then the second step is it delighting customers? Sometimes it gets reversed, but that's rare. That would be in sort of advertising business models where you have to get so many customers that are delighted so often and over such long period of time that eventually you get revenue. But most of the time it starts with, can I do something that somebody's going to be willing to pay for? And then can I do it in a repeatable fashion? So focusing on that product equation first, which is, you know, going to go in sort of slightly in sequence. And you're going to go round and round. First, like, can you get your acquisition strategy, a couple of customers to use your product? Then, and you'll focus on, you know, what do we need to do to make these customers happy? Then you'll move maybe like 3-6 months later to, can we increase the engagement of our existing customers, right? Get them to use our product, come back more often. And then once you hit some of that for like 3-6 months, you'll go to, hey, can I make a little bit more money out of these customers? Like, I'm going to tweak my pricing, my business model. And then, oh, yeah, we did very well, but now we're maybe too expensive. We lost a few customers. You'll go back to the original, like, can we drive more customers? And you kind of like will focus on one of these elements at a time until you have a fairly solid equation for driving revenue. And at that point, you know, you'll then start to focus on, can I now delight my customers, right? Get them to become references for me, get them to recommend others, get them to increase their share of wallet with me, which is more that product formula, the mind, body, spirit that we talked about.
Okay. Interesting. And revenue, would you think of revenue in different ways, like market adoption, or purely, do you think revenue is more B2B? because it's interesting, because when I think of a lot of like the top companies, like even Amazon, I think they weren't profitable besides AWS. And I don't know if they really delighted many customers either. They're just kind of like a purely functional tool. And then like, I don't know, Facebook or Instagram, you know, a lot of like kind of the top apps weren't focused really on profits. I don't know if Uber makes a profit yet. I don't know. It's interesting of like, if you think more, I don't know, do you think more about like revenue or more of like that market adoption and like more number of users or actually profit or?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's really interesting that you bring this up, because most of the time there's this myth in Silicon Valley that's like, build it and they will come. Like, oh, I'm going to become the next Facebook, and, you know, I'm going to make money. I'm going to do something and then somebody else will pay for it. But when you actually look at the top unicorns or decacorns, you can get that list on Wikipedia. The business model is actually really simple. It's like somebody values something and is willing to pay for it to, you know, get access. And you know, that sounds maybe a little bit boring, but that's how the majority of business is done. And then you know, there's also another myth of like, what is delight, you know, and there's this idea that delight is going to be like the, you know, kind of like the experience of you know, like pleasurable and so on. But delight for the most part is just do what I'm expecting you to do and do it quick and fast, right? It's really a lot about efficiency. It's about, you know, doing it like in the easiest, fastest, simplest way possible. So I actually don't have the Net Promoter Score of Amazon. I would imagine that it's incredibly high because Amazon is so good at doing just what it's meant to do. Yeah. No kind of bells and whistles, just the very straight efficiency.
Yeah. Cool. No, that's super, yeah, good to think about her. Yeah, thanks.
Great. Well, thanks, SC, for an amazing presentation. We unfortunately ran out of time. I think we could continue this discussion for another hour or so, but yeah, so thanks a lot for a great presentation. One last thing, how can people find out more about you and where can they find your book?
Yes, absolutely. So if you go to productsthatcount.com, you'll find all the resources that are, you know, cutting edge on how to build great products across industry, geography. If you're an entrepreneur and you're raising money, you can email me at sc@moatti.capital.
Great. Thanks a lot, SC, and thanks everybody for attending this Bytes of Innovation webinar. Next week, we will talk with Jessica Wen. She's a physician at Stanford, and she's going to talk about a project called RISE, which is about inclusion, health equity. So thanks everybody, and hope to see you next week.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.